The galaxy learned to fear the name Herald Nixera long before humanity ever learned it existed. Across 1,000 star systems, her fleets burned civilizations into silence with cold precision. She was not a conqueror driven by rage, nor a tyrant hungry for worship. Nixera was worse. She was inevitable. Worlds that resisted vanished. Worlds that surrendered were stripped of autonomy, culture, and history, reshaped into efficient cogs in her vast dominion. Ancient species whispered that she had ended wars before their sons were young. When the Dominion's black triangular vessels crossed into a system, resistance was calculated, catalogued, and erased. And when her gaze finally turned towards Sol, the galaxy braced for extinction. Humanity, by galactic standards, was young and loud and painfully disorganized. We had barely unified beyond Earth when Dominion probes appeared at the edge of our system. Panic followed. Satellites tracked ships that defied known physics, folding space like cloth. Military leaders argued. Politicians shouted. Scientists worked until they collapsed. Every simulation ended the same way. Total annihilation within weeks. The Dominion did not negotiate. They assessed, then acted. Humanity prepared for a last stand it knew it would lose, broadcasting messages into the void. Warnings, prayers, and defiant declarations that no one expected to be answered. Nixera watched humanity from her command spire, a structure of living alloy grown rather than built. She studied their transmissions with detached curiosity. They argued publicly. They mocked themselves even as death loomed. They created art, jokes, and stories about fighting impossible odds. Her analysts marked humanity as emotionally unstable, strategically inefficient, and technologically inferior. Termination was scheduled. Yet Nixera paused. Not because of mercy, she had none, but because something about the human data was anomalous. Species usually begged or raged. Humans did both, often in the same sentence. It intrigued her enough to authorize a single diplomatic formality, a demand for surrender, delivered not to governments, but to the species itself. The message arrived on every human screen at once. Nixera's image towered above cities. Tall, obsidian-skinned, eyes like fractured stars. Her voice was calm, absolute. Humanity, your resistance probability is negligible. Submit to Dominion integration or be erased. You have one cycle to respond. Governments scrambled to compose replies, but before any official signal was sent, an unauthorized transmission broke through. A single human face appeared on Dominion channels, grainy and unremarkable. His name was Elias Carter, a systems engineer from a lunar relay station. And he did something no species had ever done. He volunteered. "I don't represent Earth," Elias said. His voice steady despite the terror flooding his nerves. "I don't represent any government. But if you're going to judge us through me. Amy, talk to me. If we're doomed anyway, at least let one of us look you in the eye." Dominion analysts erupted in alarm. This was illogical. Sacrifice without command. Nixera raised a hand, silencing them. She studied Elias closely. His fear was evident, but beneath it was resolve. Raw, stubborn, uniquely human. Against all doctrine she accepted. A Dominion vessel folded space and plucked Elias from lunar orbit, vanishing before human defenses could react. Elias expected torture or instant death. Instead, he was given a chamber with gravity carefully tuned to his comfort. Nixera met him alone. Up close, she was more terrifying, towering, alien, ancient beyond comprehension. She circled him slowly. "You offer yourself without authority," she said. "Why?" Elias swallowed. "Because we're more than our weapons. More than our mistakes. Someone had to prove that. Nyxera tilted her head. Proof requires evidence. She subjected him to relentless interrogation, not just of facts but of ethics, history, and emotion. She forced him to relive humanity's wars, genocides, and failures. Elias did not deny them. He owned them. Then he spoke of rebuilding, of choosing better again and again even when they failed. Days turned into cycles. Nyxera began testing him in ways no prisoner had endured. She placed him in simulations where humanity could survive only by sacrificing entire populations. Each time, Elias searched for alternatives, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding in ways the Dominion's cold logic had never predicted. He argued that efficiency without compassion led only to stagnation, that fear could control but never inspire. Nyxera countered with statistics. Billions saved through ruthless choices. Elias responded with stories. Of strangers running into burning buildings. Of medics in war zones. Of humans helping not because it was optimal but because it was right. Something fractured within Nyxera. She had ruled for centuries under a singular truth. Survival justified all actions. Yet this fragile human stood before her, fully aware of his insignificance, still arguing that meaning mattered more than inevitability. Against every expectation, she delayed Earth's termination. Dominion High Command protested. For the first time in her reign, Nyxera overruled them. She ordered a deeper study, not of human technology but of human psychology. What she found unsettled her. Humanity's greatest strength was not aggression, but defiance of despair. They lost, adapted, and tried again. They were inefficient because they refused to discard empathy, even when it hurt. The galaxy noticed the delay. Whispers spread. Worlds that had resigned themselves to extinction dared to hope. Rebellion sparked, not because humanity was strong, but because one human had reminded the galaxy that inevitability could be challenged. Dominion control began to fracture. Nyxera confronted Elias with this chaos. Your existence destabilizes order, she said. Do you accept responsibility for the suffering that follows? Elias met her gaze. Change always hurts. But it's better than silence. For the first time in her long life, Nyxera felt doubt. Not weakness, but curiosity about a future uncharted by domination. In the end, Nyxera made a choice no one believed possible. She rescinded the termination order. Earth was spared. Not conquered. Not integrated. Free. She announced a transformation of the Dominion into a coalition. Slow, imperfect, and fiercely opposed. Nyxera relinquished absolute control, stepping into a role as overseer rather than tyrant. Elias was returned to Earth, hailed not as a hero by his own insistence, but as a reminder. Humanity had not won through strength or technology. It had won by being human, flawed, stubborn, compassionate. Centuries later, the galaxy would teach its children about the day fear was challenged by courage, about the warlord who ruled through inevitability, and the single human who stepped forward with nothing but words and will. They would say the galaxy feared her, but it listened to him. And in that moment everything changed. Nyxera watched Earth from orbit one final time. Blue oceans turned beneath drifting clouds, fragile and defiant all at once. For the first time since she had taken command of the Dominion, she did not see a resource, a threat, or a variable to be controlled. She saw a people who had stared extinction in the face and answered not with fleets, but with a single voice willing to stand alone. Elias Carter returned home quietly. There were no parades, no statues erected in his honor. By his request, He went back to engineering, to maintaining systems no one noticed unless they failed. Yet his name spread anyway, whispered across worlds that had never known hope. Not as a warrior, not as a conqueror, but as proof. Proof that courage did not require power, and that even the smallest species could change the trajectory of the galaxy. The Dominion did not collapse overnight. Change never came that easily. There were factions that rebelled against Nixera's reforms, admirals who tried to seize power, systems that burned in the chaos of transition. Nixera faced them all, not as an unstoppable force, but as a leader learning restraint. Where once she would have erased dissent, she now negotiated. Where once she would have crushed resistance, she now listened. It was slower, and infinitely harder, but it endured. Other species began to speak openly for the first time in centuries. Cultures long suppressed resurfaced. Art returned. Language evolved. Worlds that had known only survival began to imagine futures again. And through it all, humanity remained untouched, unclaimed, an anomaly allowed to exist on its own terms. Nixera often reflected on that fragile human who had stood before her without armor or authority. Elias had never claimed humanity was good. Only that it tried. That it failed and rose again, over and over, driven by something no equation could measure. In him, she had glimpsed a truth older than her dominion. That fear could rule the galaxy, but it could never guide it forward. Long after Elias's lifetime had ended, long after Earth had sent its own ships into the stars, Nixera ordered a final addition to the Dominion archives. A single record, required reading for every leader who followed her. Contained no battle data, no strategies, only a message. The galaxy was once ruled by inevitability, changed when one human chose to step forward. Remember this. Power demands obedience, but courage invites transformation. And so the galaxy remembered. Not the fleets, not the terror, not even Nixera's name. It remembered the moment fear met humanity, and blinked first.